Hey, students, some of you might have had some difficulty curve fitting the Faraday's law. So what I thought I would do is give you kind of a secondary option. So if you got onto the virtual machine, great. And of course, also if you did graphical analysis, great. That's probably the best way to do the curve fit. But some of you were having difficulty. I know our VM is a bit touchy. And also the curve fitting in graphical analysis can be a bit tricky. And I just thought I'd make a little video here with a second alternative. So what I went ahead and I did first is I calculated, or excuse me, I typed in our X value. This is for part two. And here is our voltage. Now, just to kind of remind you, this is the equation we are trying to curve fit. So we have a constant C, which we want to be looking for, and then we have the radius, which we're looking for. All of this equals to the voltage. So that's that second column that was over on my Google Sheets. And then this is the X, the position. And so Google Sheets doesn't do a real good job of curve fitting, but you can kind of trick it. Excel works the same way. And here's what I mean by that. Let me go back to my Google Sheets here. All right, so here's the X value, and here is the Y value. Okay, now, if you wanted just to make a plot of this, so this is a plot of our actual experimental value, first thing you kind of do is kind of highlight the data there, and then you say insert chart. Okay. And so it's going to give you a kind of a chart like this by default. Let me scoot it over a little bit and say, okay, there is my raw data. Now over here, they give me a little setup and an editor, so I could change titles and all that. Let me not focus on that, but it's just basically the curve fitting that I want to kind of really focus on here. So let me go ahead then, and here's kind of the trick is what we're going to do, and we have to do this a little more manually than in graphical analysis. We're going to just type that formula. Let me go back and remind you of that formula here. It's right here. There it is. And so just put in some dummy variables for the curve fit parameter, the C and the R sub P. And then you're just going to play with those dummy parameters until it gets closer and closer. That's really the key setup here. So when I go to type in the equation, I'll put a little box here. And the first thing you want to do is to type in a formula. And the first thing you do to a formula is you got to type the equal sign. So I'll put an equal. And then I'll put a parentheses. And then this is the C value. And let me just make something up. You could study the numbers a little bit here, but experience tells me it's around a 0.1. So I'm going to cheat a little bit knowing the end result and just say, okay, I'm going to put in a 0.1. Then I'm going to multiply it by that R sub P squared. And again, let me just kind of put a seed in here. Let me put a 0.1 and square it. Okay, so there's the numerator so far. And then I'll go divide. All right. Now maybe I'll jump back over to the formula. So I've done the numerator here. I've done that right here, the C and the R sub P squared. So now let me do the denominator here. Okay. And so I'm going to have some parentheses here. So some parentheses. And then I need that R sub P squared again. So again, as a seed value, and you can put in anything you want for the seed value. This is just a place to get started that we're going to manually adjust. But there's the 0.1 squared. And then the X value, this is really this column A. And so you're just going to put, for Google Sheets, an A1. Oops, excuse me, A1. And you can see it kind of puts it in that burnt orange color and says, okay, that what you want me to do is jump over to this column. Yeah, that's right, because I want you to put whatever's in that X column. Okay, and then we're going to square that too, and then close parentheses. And then that whole thing is raised to a 1.5 power, or 3/2. Okay. And so that'll calculate that first line based upon right here, x equaling 0. So I'll hit enter. And here's where Google Sheets is kind of helpful. It says, hey, do you want me to copy this formula all the way down? And it's called autofill. And you might want to double check, and I will here, but usually it's pretty good. And I'll say, okay, do that. In fact, maybe I'll go back to my first box and then scroll down, and you can see here that it's saying, take A2, square it, and then the next one down, and the next one down, and the next one down. And so if I get down here to row 14, you can see it just says here A14 squared. Okay. So this is a curve fit where we have guessed that the C and R is 0.1. And like I said, the better you make your first guess, the easier this is. This is what makes graphical analysis a little nicer to do, because graphical analysis would just, try thousands of values, millions of values within a second and get the best one. Whereas you've got to hopefully help it along here, because you can't type in a million different values. All right. Now let's put this data on here, and this is columns C. And so let's come back here to our chart. If we right click and go down to our data range, you can see in the pop-up menu here, here's our x-axis, which is the A1 to A21. So that's all of our x values. And then our series is this B1 to B21. That's this typed in value that I measured in the experiment. And now what I'd like to also put on this chart is the C, the C1 to C21. And that's where we can go here, add series. And so I'll add series. You can kind of do it different ways. Probably the easiest way, I think, is here to just select the data. It'll give you a little place to type in the range. And so I'll put C1 to C21 and click OK. And so that'll be our second data range. And you can see it put it here, and it typed it in red. And you can see that my first seed value purposely was a little close. All right. But now is where we play with the numbers and we get a little bit better. And so let's give this a little try. And again, unlike graphical analysis, where graphical analysis would just, try thousands of them and see which ones get closer, or maybe even millions of them. We don't really have the human speed of that, but we could use our brains a little bit. And you can kind of see, like, this very first one, when x equals to 0. In fact, you come back over to the equation. When x equals to 0, you really have this C over R value. And in my case, my C and R are the same amount. So I get a 1 to get me started. But keep that in mind, and that'll kind of help us. See, it does calculate a 1. And I want it to come out to be about a 0.9. So that tells me if I were to adjust the C value. So let me come back up to the formula. See, there it is, formula. And put in a point. Oh, let's see, we got a 0.1 there. So let's go 0.092 and hit enter. That should give me an exact match on the first one. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the other ones are right. I will point out, though, it doesn't autofill down. It says, okay, you want to change just that one. And Google Sheets wasn't smart enough to go to say, oh, do you want to change all of them? But let me just copy all the way down and say, yes, I want to change all of them. And so now I've got the red a little closer, and I like that. It starts off well. It looks like it maybe fades off a little too fast. So that would kind of tell me that my R is a little too big. And so here's where we'll just say, well, let me let it taper off at a little slower rate. Instead of a 0.1, how about we go 0.09? 0.0. And I'll change each of the R's. Oh, I must have typed something wrong. Oh, yeah, I got 2 decimal places. Okay. Fix that. Now, of course, that made the C a little bigger, a little higher than the 92. So that's going to have some, what we'd call some self feedback, some iteration. Maybe I'll just do something and see where this gets. Oh, now I don't really like that. I actually did not like that at all. But let's try the other way. Let's go back to the 0.1. And let's make this then a little bit bigger, 0.11 and 0.1. And see what that. Oh, I like that a little bit better. Anyways, I'm going to stop now because you get the idea that this is a way to curve fit. It's different. It's a combination of your brains and the computer's calculating power instead of just the computer's raw calculating power. But it will work for you. Hope that helps. Take care.